utilising data to make sure that you're buying in spots that are going to have growth and versus potentially buying in Perth like I did in a market that was flat for a very, very long time. So you can use data, and then if you're going to buy in suburbs, you may as well try and target the ones that are going to have the growth. So use the data to select your suburb, just keep learning, do more developments as well. So I'm obviously doing a development at the moment, but I definitely want to do more in that space as well. Maybe introduce a few other strategies to focus a bit more on passive income and that sort of stuff.
Welcome to Perth Property Insider, where you will learn how to grow your wealth and improve your life using Perth property. Our show is brought to you by Investors Edge Real Estate, the highly rated and award-winning property management, sales and buyers agency servicing the whole of Perth. Now, here's your host, Jared Mann.
Hey Graham, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Really excited to be getting back to my original investing roots and talking about renovating for profit and flipping houses. So it's going to be a fun chat.
Awesome, Jared. Appreciate your having me on the show, and looking forward to having a good chat with you about all things renovating and flipping and so on.
Well, I know we've caught up a few times in the past, but over the last 2-3 years, you've really carved out a niche in the Perth investing space for renovating, and you've been very active in that space yourself. So I'm sure you've got lots of experience to share with us today. But how did you originally get into investing? Take us back to where it all began, because I love hearing someone's origin story, if we'll call it that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm obviously from Perth, same as you. So, I mean, I think I bought my first investment property maybe about 25 years old or something like that. So it's probably about 15 years ago now. And I pretty much started working in the real estate industry. I worked in new home sales for about 10 years. So, really loved that, enjoyed the whole sales and that side of it as well. But I suppose that was my journey. I mean, in Perth, we had a pretty, to be honest, I was only sort of investing in Perth, and my Perth didn't have the best run for a long time. So people like John, property analysts and stuff like that have really opened up my eyes the last few years. But, also we've been pretty lucky in Perth the last few years as well. So
tell us about that first investment property. Was it a good choice, a bad choice? Did you make any mistakes with that one, or did it all go all right?
So the first investment property was like a little unit in Como. It was just a little 2x1. Like I said, I was about 25. I bought it for $290, and I sold it 2 or 3 years later for, I bought it in 2009 or 10. I sold it in 2013. I think I sold it for about $100K more. So that wasn't the worst, but I certainly bought a couple of investment properties around that same time, and I didn't have as good an outcome. So like I said, the Perth market was flat. So I sort of bought myself, from about 25 to 27, I bought 3 investment properties, and then I was sort of all maxed out. Didn't really, didn't have that education as, service billing and all that sort of stuff. Bought, negatively geared and that sort of stuff. So I made a couple of mistakes, but obviously you live and you learn.
And when did you sort of decide to get into renovating and flipping houses? Is that been as the market's come back and you sort of started to see that opportunity, or how did it come about?
No, I sort of fell in by accident, to be honest. So what actually happened is I actually had a property. It was actually in a suburb called Kubla. It was 3x1 on a full size block, and the house got pretty much trashed by the tenants. So, and when I say trashed, I mean it was pretty bad. So I had no other option but to fix it and try and get something for it, or pretty much sell it and take a hit. So I thought to myself, well, look, it's not gonna take too much money to renovate this and do it up. And I remember I had a really tight budget, and I was able to pretty much stick to that budget, and got a really good result from it. And after I got that good result and seeing the before and after, it kind of definitely opened up my mind as to, oh wow, there's definitely something in this. Like, rather than just buying properties, retail price, what most people buy, there's got to be something said for buying properties that are, really run down, that the most of the market doesn't want. And then you can obviously buy them, add value through renovation, and then sell for a profit, or even just, keep and obviously rent out, but just have that equity. So, so that was kind of my introduction to, renovating.
Do you remember what year that was around? And was the market still flat at that point, or was there a bit of market movement in that?
I think it was early 21, so it was only about 3 years ago. It feels like a lot longer because I've done so many flips in the last
years. I've seen how active you've been.
Yeah, but Yeah, I mean, it was definitely active, but the market wasn't like it is now. Like
Wasn't surging like now, but it was still positive.
it was definitely positive. Like obviously everywhere was sort of positive from that point. But yeah, Perth certainly wasn't getting the same growth then, or you weren't getting the same as what you've been getting the last sort of 18 months or so, yeah, for sure.
So take us through what have you sort of done over the last, I guess, 3 years since then, and where are you sort of at with your portfolio and your strategy? And you don't need to go into too much because we've got a special event coming up where we're going to go into specific strategies that are working in this market, and we're going to deep dive on a whole bunch of other great topics and tell people a bit more about that at the end. But yeah, where is this sort of, are you still focused on flipping and renovating, or are you holding some of the properties, or how does that sort of mix work?
Yeah, so it's definitely a mix. I mean, I'm definitely accumulating some and obviously still flipping as well. So, I mean, to be honest, like after, when the market sort of did come back in Perth, I realised I had a couple of, negatively geared properties that were sort of no good for the portfolio. So when the time was right, I flicked them, obviously, using sort of, John Lindeman's advice and his data and that sort of stuff. So from there, obviously, I started really sort of flipping mainly for cash flow because I wanted to give up the day job. So that was, for me, it wasn't about with the whole flipping. It was more about, okay, well, why go to work and earn an income when I can just flip property and make money that way? So the flipping side of things is more for me. It's more for cash flow. It's a business. But then I'm also renovating and holding property as well. So I mean, I'm doing a development at the moment. It's a triplex. They're just accumulating them. They're not being sold. I bought a couple of other properties last year as well, which one was in the suburb of Samson. Just recently bought a unit in June down there. So yeah, so a bit of a mix of everything. Definitely buying to hold, but also you're going to continue to flip for cash flow.
And what it would be some of your major learnings, I guess, doesn't necessarily be about renovating or flipping, but just in general, as you've sort of evolved with your thinking, because I like to look back at what I thought when I first started, and it makes you realize how far you've come with the types of properties you buy as well. So
100%. So I actually think the number one thing is using data to make your buying decisions. Like I think by far that is the right thing. That is the biggest learning I've had. Like I said, when I started out, like I think people forget how much has changed just in the last sort of 4 or 5 years with buyers agents, and it seems like now everyone's talking about data and buying in the hotspots and all that sort of stuff. But I reckon it was 10 years ago, most people were just buying in their own backyard, right? Like if you were from Perth, you'd buy in Perth. I'm not saying everyone, there was definitely more educated investors.
No, but it was a lot more random.
Yeah. And so for me, it was just like, okay, well, I live in Perth, you're going to go buy in a suburb that's quite close by. But just because it's close to you doesn't mean that that's the right investment. So utilising data to make sure that you're buying in spots that are going to have growth and that sort of stuff versus potentially buying in Perth like I did in a market that was flat for a very, very long time. So that would be, for me, by far the biggest learning that I've had.
And I guess a lot of people I think they sometimes focus too much on the renovating part, which is important if you're using that strategy, but the suburb selection is just as important because you don't want to get to the end of your reno and find that it's a soft market if you're planning to sell and the price isn't there of what you were hoping for. And the market can do a lot of the heavy lifting, and your reno can be just polish on the icing on the cake, so to speak, if you get that suburb right. So,
I mean, I think it's a combination of both for sure. So if you can use data and then, if you're going to buy in suburbs, you may as well try and target the ones that are going to have the growth. So use the data to select your suburb. But then absolutely, there's an old saying, you make your money when you buy. So if you can, buy the property well, then you're going to do better. I mean, for me, my strategy is always buying under market, buying wholesale rather than retail price. So for me, buying off market is something I very much focus on. So yeah, so for me, it's definitely a combination.
Okay. Well, thinking back to, I guess you must meet a lot of new investors that are starting out and they're like, where do I get started if I was at the beginning? Like, do you have any advice for them? And because, renovating's not for everyone, but would you do the same thing again if you were starting, and what would you do?
Look, I mean, the first thing I'd say to anyone would be to get educated and, like I said, and then find a strategy that's going to work for you. So for you, if you're a career professional, career-driven person and you don't have time for renovating and that sort of stuff, then for you, it might be just buy and hold. that's totally fine. But obviously use the data and, get educated so that way you're buying in the right locations. If you're someone that wants to get more active in property and maybe, and flipping and development and rooming houses and Airbnbs or whatever the strategy might be, then again, get obviously educated and then pick a strategy to start. I mean, I think a good thing about flipping or renovating is for me, like if it's a bit of a starting point because you can definitely make cash flow quickly and stuff like that. Whereas, bigger development deals, they can take 2, 3, 4 years long, if not longer, depending on the size of them. So I think with development, definitely think that renovating and flipping is a bit of a stepping stone to go into those bigger deals. But yeah, again, education first. Once you sort of know what you're doing, then go and, dip your toes and have a go.
And so are you like, how many renos a year are you typically needing to do to sort of get to replacing your income? And of course, that's how long is a piece of string, or how big are your goals for replacing that? And how have you found like the time available, and have you sort of been working on your systems and other things to make this time condensed with what you're doing? Or?
Yeah. Typically speaking, the rule of thumb is that you should be making a minimum of 10% of whatever, so if you're all in at 600,000, you should be making a minimum of 60 grand. If it's more expensive, you're all in at 800 million bucks, then you need to be making 80, 100K on the deal. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. For me, like I won't do a deal if there's not 60K in it. Like that's my rule.
You cut off.
Yeah. So so if you're looking at those sorts of numbers, last year I was a lot luckier. Like, on my average was well over 100K per reno last year, but obviously there was growth in the market, and you're not going to get that in every market. So if you're in a neutral market, you should be, happy with those sort of $60,000 sort of dollar profits. So yeah, so that's kind of, yeah. Did I answer your question for that part as far as how much?
Yeah, I think that answered it better than I asked it.
Okay, so I think a couple of deals a year would replace most people's income from work, sort of thing.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess looking to the future, what are some of your goals that you're looking to achieve, and what have you got in mind?
Yeah, so my goals are just to keep growing, obviously just keep learning. You do more developments as well. So I'm obviously doing a development at the moment, but I definitely want to do more in that space as well. Yeah, just obviously maybe introduce a few other strategies to focus a bit more on passive income and that sort of stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of, I suppose, from an investing perspective, that's probably a bit more of my goals. Obviously, at the moment, like I said, I'm obviously doing a development at the moment, which I'm keeping those, and I've got, bought a couple of other properties in the last probably 6 months that are obviously keeping as well. So, but they're Perth based. And obviously I think that at the moment Perth is, there's a lot of opportunity in certain parts of the Perth market. But then obviously probably just to continue to diversify, so invest into state and stuff like that when the timing's right. I definitely think there's going to be good opportunity in Queensland now and over the next couple of years, as long as you're buying the right type of property in the right location and that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think just knowing the market, having a good property analyst who you can lean on to get that information, so that way you can be confident in your buying decisions.
So tell us a bit about your business, Renovating, because I know you've got a bit of a community and following growing here in Perth, and how could the listeners, I guess, get some help in that space? Or I'll put some details in the show notes of where they can look you up and reach out. But tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, cool. So basically I started a company called Renovating. It's a mentoring business essentially where I've got a course and basically help renovators all around the country. So we've got students all over Australia. Sort of launched, I think it was we all launched the course October last year. We've grown pretty quickly, so that's been really exciting. But basically I teach people, there's a course where they work at their own pace and they basically learn how to flip houses. But as part of the program, there's coaching sessions every week, and both on how to flip houses, and obviously, and there's also a mindset coach and property analyst and that sort of stuff all included as part of the program. So yeah, so essentially just helping other people do exactly what I'm doing, and that is really buy properties at wholesale and renovate and flip and it's not just renovating and flipping either, it's renovating and holding. So whether in my opinion, whether you're wanting to flip or hold, you can do better if you buy the property well and you add value through renovation versus paying retail for a property. So that's kind of what I teach people in the program.
Yeah, great. I know you've had John Lindeman plugging into that, helping you with your sort of suburban area selection. And I've known John for God, it's probably, I don't know, 5, maybe even 10 years, a long way back anyway. He's certainly been around a while, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think I've been following him since 2016. I think I've been sort of following. I got introduced to him at a seminar in Perth some time ago, but yeah.
Yeah, so we're both speaking at one of his upcoming seminars that we're running jointly, and it's called How to Profit from Property Investments. So you'll be covering off lots of renovation and flipping and purchase strategies that all tie in with working with John's data. And I know I'm looking to go into the Perth market and some of our strategies and tips from the buyer's agency side of how to compete in this market, because it's bloody tough out there if you're the average Joe Blow at the moment. Lots of people at home opens is an understatement, 20 to 30 people at most home opens. So I guess getting into the market and getting the right property seen is certainly going to help people. And there's a lot of opportunity to be still made from the cycle ahead. I'll post details in the seminar, which is on Saturday, the 25th of May. We're doing it in the morning, 8:30 to 11, and I'll put a link to the landing page in the show notes. So check that out, people. And looking forward to seeing a few of our listeners along to catch up with both of us.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to meeting people. I've got a pretty big Facebook group so I'll definitely be sharing it in there as well, and look forward to meeting some of the members on that day as well. So it's going to be good.
Well, thanks for coming on, Graham, and sharing your story, and always good to chat to another Perth local investor. So I'll catch you pretty soon at the event as well.
Absolutely. Really appreciate your time appreciate you having me on, Jared. So yeah, look forward to the next event with John.
Yes, mate.
Just a reminder, the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature. As we don't know your specific situation, you should always seek professional advice before taking any action. For free market reports on your suburbs of interest and other helpful resources to grow your wealth, make sure you join my property investor update at investorsedge.com.au/join. And finally, make sure you're a member of our Perth Property Investment Facebook group to be part of the conversation with other like-minded investors, get help to your questions, and get a feel for what's going on out there in the market. I'll see you in the group.